few minutes or up to 1 hour, like that. You need to be prepared. You can decide to be distracted, but I will look to you. I will find you in the coffee break, and I will reproduce again the presentation just for you during the coffee break. So let's talk about DSpace 8, but I want to have room to talk about DSpace 9 and 10. DSpace 8 is the latest version that was released this year in June. 4Science was the major contributor of this version. It's the major contributor actually, since the last version of DSpace. And we are invested a lot of time in enhanced interoperability of DSpace. Some of the features that we are talking about are not immediately benefit for your institution right now, but I think that we will stay talking about this feature for the next 5 and 10 years, like what we have done when OIPMH was created as a protocol. And we know that all the services that we run are based on this initial concept that are nowadays more than 20 years old. So all what we have done is to improve the fairness really of DSpace. So we want to make content in your repository more findable, interoperable, accessible, and reusable. So let's talk about the first feature, is named publication claim. What is the goal of this feature? The goal of this feature is to give you the ability to grab content that exists elsewhere, to import this content in your repository. This is a time-saving tool for your researcher, for ROR Integration. You can use information that are available elsewhere. And this is really important because you need to have all the data about your researcher in your institution. If you want to promote open access, and you want because you are part of this community, you need to have your content in your repository, because the duplicate of content across several institutional repositories is the first point of any preservation strategy, and is what makes the network of repository stronger and more suitable to build overlay service that can compete with publishers. So, which is the use case? Use case that you can imagine is a new researcher that joined your institution. And this researcher have already produced research output in previous job, or has already collaborated with researcher at your university. And you want to have this content in your repository, but you don't want to spend vast time of researcher to input again and again the same information. And this doesn't matter if we move this work in the hand of the librarians. Also, librarians can spend their time in doing much more valuable job than just data input. So how it works? As soon as your researcher logged in the system, is prompt of publication mainly, but in general content that is found elsewhere that can be imported into the repository. You have already seen some of this slide from team, but the point is, this is the login page. I'm just logged in, I get the notification. You can still get the notification if you go to my DSpace, and you can follow this link to see the actual data that are suggested to be imported into the platform. They are just suggestions, because of course there could be false positive. There will be a case where you don't really want to import this content back in your repository for different policy that you have in place. What is important about this feature is not only the fact that there is now, you can enable it and work out of box with OpenAIR, with the OpenAIR Research Graph that is quite massive database of open content that is relevant also for US, because all US institutions, of course, collaborate across all the world, and so with many European institutions. So also for your US institution is quite common is most of your content can be found or co-authored with European institutions. You will find this content in OpenAIR. But it's not only about OpenAIR. What we have implemented is a general framework in this space that allow in future to create specific connector to other providers. So we can look to other data sources to find content that is missing in your repository. Which other provider? You can think about commercial provider, you can think about other open provider. We are trying to find a way to bring integration with OpenAlex for this space. So that will be built on top of the same framework. So it's not yet here, but we hope to have that soon. The framework also has a concept of COAR. So you can plug in a pipeline of evaluator that will decide how good is this suggestion. OpenAIR is not very good in terms of API that they provide. So to search in OpenAIR, essentially we need to search for other name. And you know that there is a lot of duplicate and face attribution and so on. So you can use some smart assumption to understand if this match is a good match or not. Maybe you can look to the date of the publication, and if this publication is authored before that I'm graduated, it's unlikely that is my publication. Or we can build more reasoner that are also more sophisticated. The same feature is also available for administrators. So the feature is intended to be a self-service for the researcher. Individual researcher can grab the publication that are missing in the repository, but also the administrator, the librarian, will have an overview of all the content in the repository. And if your institution decides to have library that run the service on behalf of your researcher, they can look to that and import what is missing in the researcher profile. Okay, you are performing very well. No one is distracted. So, some requirement, configurable entities. We need to have configurable entities. We need to look to entities that can have suggestion attached to them. So we create suggestion for researcher right now. And so you also need to have researcher profile because your user need to be identified as a specific researcher so that we can send this notification directly to this specific user. But this is not limited to that. So this is what you have in DSpace 8, but the idea is configurable entities because we can make also suggestions for organization eventually. The framework support that. And how we can make suggestions for organization using ROR. ROR identifier allows disambiguation for organization. And you can imagine that research output are better bind to organization using the research organization identifier. And this will improve the quality of suggestion. So this is, in the long run, all the idea how these interoperability tools will collaborate together. The second framework that has been introduced in DSpace 8 is the data correction. Which is the idea of the data correction? The data correction is to keep the quality of your data as accurate as possible, but also keep the quality of the data in the open science repository network higher possible. What I'm saying, the first use case is the integration again with OpenAIR, on the OpenAIR research graph. OpenAIR is able to send notification back to the institution when they contribute their data back to the OpenAIR research graph using OIPMH. If OpenAIR found that this data has some misalignment compared to the data of other institution. My institution sent data to OpenAIR, but I have authored a publication with team, and Lyrasis also send data back to OpenAIR. Imagine this scenario. And the data in the institutional repository of Lyrasis is a little different than the data in my repository. Maybe I have the abstract, but Lyrasis have the keywords. And OpenAIRE is able to mesh up these two records and to create an empowered record. And what OpenAIRE do right now is to inform the individual repository and say, at my institution, or you are missing keywords. And to the repository of legacy say, you are missing the abstract. And they suggest you add this information. So with this feature, you can, your administrator will get this notification directly into the repository and can just say, oh yes, you are right, I'm missing the keywords. These keywords are good, I accept them. Or I miss the abstract, I accept the abstract. But I can also say, no, you make a mistake. This is not my abstract. You mesh up two different records, you mess the data. And in the case of OpenAIRE, DSpace also give back this feedback to OpenAIRE. And this means that also OpenAIRE can improve the quality of the data. So a couple of screenshots. It's a general framework. Again, you have the possibility in DSpace 8 to just enable it, use it with OpenAIRE. This will work out of the box. But the idea is that you can use this framework to attach other providers. It could be commercial provider again, it could be open provider, other open provider. Think again about OpenAlex. Each provider will be able to provide different topic about the improvement. So I can suggest abstract that is missing, persistent identifier, or a relation to project and so on. But maybe different provider can give different type of suggestion. You can review this suggestion. This is an example where, this is a real example actually, from a publication from University of Trieste that was missing a link to a European funded project. And OpenAIRE is saying this publication seems to have acknowledgement in the PDF for this project, but this acknowledgement is not present in your metadata. So it suggests to have this information. It gives the acronym of the project, gives the identifier of the project, a lot of other information that you can just with a single click include in your metadata. Of course, if you have configurable entities, it's also possible that you track project locally into the repository. So instead of create a duplicate record for this project information, you can identify this project in your local record and say this is the same project, bind these two information together. So again, what you need to use this feature? Right now you need to be a provider of OpenAIRE, because this is the way that OpenAIRE will give you back feedback about your data. You need to have configurable entities enabled in your repository, you need to have researcher profile, and you need to enable the quality assurance module in DSpace that has been flagged as a data feature, so in DSpace 8 need to be enabled manually. Another provider is the one that was already anticipated by Tim. It's the same concept. So OpenAIRE can provide feedback about your data, but think a moment about which are the user that can provide a lot of feedback about your data. So this was just a contribution from that we built with the California Digital Library, and was just a simple use case, more to scratch the surface of this functionality. So you found a record that is misleading and need to be withdrawn from the repository, or you found a record that was withdrawn but need to be restated in the repository. And you can manage this workflow to ask to withdraw or restate with the administrator instead and use email address, email, or anything outside of the system. But in future, it could be used, it could be enlarged to other functionality like suggest a title change, suggest you have keywords, suggesting a missing author, or anything that is wrong in your data that has been identified by the user of your repository. I will skip this additional slide. Okay. So let's now move to one thing that will be, I'm confident that it will be a disruptive technology into our world. This is something that I take the risk to say will be so disruptive as OIPMH was 20 years ago. And I'm saying that with the confidence to say YPMH was created by Herbert van de Sompel. Herbert van de Sompel is behind also this idea. Which is the point? We are moving from a protocol that plan to harvest content from a repository in bulk to a protocol that allow near real-time messaging between different systems. So COAR Notify is nothing more than linked data notification tailored to the repository functionality, so that a repository can inform another system about some events that influence the object in the repository. So I created a new publication, I established a link from one publication to another content. I request some service from you. So COAR Notify is now available out of box in DSpace. We should be very proud to know that DSpace is the first platform that have basic support for COAR Notify out of box. The protocol is still in the younger years, so you need to expect a lot of change over time, new scenario, new idea around this protocol over the next years. But what is a use case? One use case was already presented by Tim. So the idea is peer review, open peer review system, so that your researcher can use the repository to put working paper in it, and use the repository to identify a peer review community to send his working paper so that this paper is reviewed and feedback is provided to the repository. All staying within the repository. So the researcher work on the repository and the peer reviewer work on the PCI, in this case, side. I will go quickly on that, but the idea is submission. DSpace will send, think about an email, we send a message to PCI saying, can you review this content for me? PCI will say, yes, I will do. Sometime later, the review is conducted internally to this external system. This external system at some point will say, okay, this is the review of your paper. And maybe in a second, and DSpace can have a link back to this review, or could eventually grab this review and store the review within the repository. This is not built out of box right now in the future, but think in perspective. What we want to have, we want to have open peer review that has been built transparently in a system and are shared in an open way. And in this way, the repository could become older, also the review. And sometime later, an overlay journal can endorse your paper. And in this case, DSpace will also say this publication has been endorsed by this community. Another use case, and most available out of box. I want to say almost really out of box because on the data side, on the Dataverse side, unfortunately there is a bug that prevents this to work right now. But what is the idea? DSpace can add a link to a Dataverse dataset. So you have a publication in your DSpace repository, you have a dataset in Dataverse. And DSpace will recognize this URL and send a message to Dataverse. Dataverse will receive this message and say, okay, I can process this link, and will create a link back to DSpace. This means that if your institution uses these two open solutions for publication and for dataset, now these two systems work more closely, and you don't need to maintain manually this bidirectional link on both sides. This works also on the other side. So if the workflow starts from Dataverse and your researchers say this dataset use methodology from this publication that is available in this repository, or is the supplementary material of this publication, Dataverse will send a message to DSpace. DSpace will receive and process this message and will create the link back to Dataverse. But again, you can play with that, and you can have two DSpace instances that send message one to the other. So you can have a DSpace sender, DSpace receiver. It could be your DSpace repository for publication, your DSpace repository for dataset. Many institutions use that DSpace for research data. Many institutions use a single repository for that. Some institutions use 2 separate DSpace repositories for that. Or you could be a community, a regional community, a thematic community where each institution has its own repository, but your repository have a strong collaboration together. And what can happen is that one DSpace can send a message to the other saying, I have a link to your record. And the other repository will receive this link, will decide to accept this link and add the metadata in the record to link back to the other repository. All of that managed automatically or in a moderated way. So you have control about what will happen when the message is received. So there is a lot of detail about how this works on the back end. What is important to know is this feature is more complex. Yes, true. Had some complexity to your repository. You are moving into the world of a distributed system. You are become aware that you are part of a distributed system because it's not a movie. It's just become aware that you are one node in a large network. And you have a functionality that cross this network. So one system sends a message, the other system needs to receive, to process. Error and mistake can happen on both sides. And this makes a bit harder to understand what is going on. So to help on that, we try to build as much tool as possible from the administrative perspective to, in this screenshot, you see that you can list the other service that you trust. Because at this point, you will receive message from another system. Of course, this can be abused in some way. So the first way is to list your partner and decide, okay, I expect to receive message from my Dataverse, I expect to receive message from the Harvard Dataverse, from my community, and so on. And for each of these services, you can decide the level of trust. So in some case, is your internal system, you approve whatever action will result from this message automatically. In other case, you want to take a look to what this message grab in and take a decision. During the submission, you have a submission step that you can enable that will allow your researcher to pick one of the services that you have registered to request service on that. So essentially to request an open peer review. The use case is you decide that you want to collaborate with PCI, you want to collaborate with a local Open Journal installation. Once that Open Journal system will also integrate COAR Notify. Also JS is part of the network of partner of COAR Notify. So at some point you will have this integration with that. So your researcher will decide to who ask this review or ask for an endorsement. Or the last one is also a nice use case, is a new scenario. Is about preservation. You want to inform a preservation system that the new content exists in your repository, so that this repository, this other system, like Matica, maybe instead of crawling all the day to look for new content, will just receive a just-in-time notification. You have a new content, precious manuscript deposited in your repository, and they can decide to extract this information and store also in the preservation system. You have a lot of dashboard to understand what is going on, how many messages was exchanged, in which status of processing this message are, because everything is processed in an asynchronous way. We pay a lot of attention in non-distributed performance of your repository. We want to be sure that if you receive tons of messages, they are proceeded at the speed that your repository is able to manage, without to be overkilled by all this message. And you can go to see the detail of each individual message. So you can see the exact content of the JSON linked data that is the payload of this message. Again, look into the single record. In COAR Notify, essentially you send a message that's about an event that involves one object. So in this case, you have a sample of, you asked for a review. This review was accepted to be conducted, but not yet conducted. You have asked to perform an endorsement, but this endorsement was rejected. You have asked for another endorsement to a different community, and this endorsement has not yet get an answer. So this is one page where you can see the status of 3 different requests that was sent to 3 different services. Another point, another feature introduced in DSpace 8, integration with the research of the registry of research organization, ROR. Why is it so important? It's similar to ORCID. It aims to solve the problem of ambiguity when you name an institution. And it will enable in future to build more advanced service, both in your repository than in the network of repository. To build advanced service, we need to have metadata of high quality. This is what had given power to publisher until 10 years ago. Publisher sell us a lot of services because they have the data that we have created. You have worked for publisher. Now we need to work for us. We need to work for the open community. So we need to be sure that repository have good data quality, good metadata. Need to identify correctly organization, so that once that organization is identified, you can look for other high quality data for your institution, if everyone do that. So which is the feature? Banally, when you edit an item, you can look up for an organization in ROR. So this can be done in the edit item when you manage the relation in DSpace 8. If you try to add an organization, you can perform a search, you can import from the data of your university. More important, you will import the ROR ID. So this ROR ID will stay attached to the entity, the organization unit entity that will be created in your repository. How this information can be used? Let's say that we have a University of Basilicata, it's a university from Italy, and there is the ROR ID here. When we send a funding to ORCID from DSpace, and we say that this funding was granted to this university, or was funded by this university with internal fund, we are able to identify the organization on the ORCID side. So this information, the ROR ID, is used at the interoperability level. So when we send metadata to ORCID and so on. Think about a long plan. We have the feature to grab content elsewhere. We are looking to OpenAlex. OpenAlex has strong identification of organization using ROR ID. If we make connect the dots, the plan is we know your ROR ID, the ROR ID of your department, and we can search in OpenAlex all the research output of your specific university without risk to mix content from the different University of Chicago or Minneapolis here, the different universities again. So let's move to, I'm at the middle, right? Yeah. Let's move to look to what we should expect for DSpace 9 and DSpace 10. First of all, I link to Wiki. This is not a definitive list. There is not yet a decision from the governance. So we are about an open discussion about what is the plan. This is small. I know that you cannot read that. The idea is, right now we have identified some macro topic that will be probably the least for DSpace 9. Let's look in detail to each of these aspects. Improving performance. This is not a new topic. The community already invested a lot also in DSpace 7, DSpace 7.6, and so on. We hear about all the issue around crawling of DSpace 7. We know that DSpace 7 is performing not so good as previous version of DSpace, and many institutions are in trouble in managing a high load on their service. I have strong opinion on that, honestly. I think that, as some of you already say, that some of these points should be not addressed by DSpace, not addressed into the DSpace code base, are more about managing a good hosting, and there are solutions for this issue that are not just for DSpace. You need to consider to use a CDN. You need to consider to use a web application firewall. You need to be much smarter in dealing with crawler than just whitening individual IP address, because we know that crawler are becoming smarter and smarter. But for instance, there is a lot of AI that can help on that to identify distributed denial of service attackers, things like that. So we need to think about repository as one of the core services at our university. Is an enterprise-grade system. It deserves enterprise-grade hosting solution. So we should start to talk about high availability. We should start to talk about ISO 27001 and all this stuff that 4Science can provide you as a provider. But for sure, we also need to improve the code base. There is no sense wasting of CPU cycle in the space that need to be improved. That the community is working on that together. One of the specific activities is the fact that the Angular user interface is talking with the backend in two separate scenarios. One is when a normal user, a human user, is downloading the Angular application and from the browser is interacting with the backend, and this is everything normal, everything fine. But the other scenario is when a crawler go to your home page or your item page, and the request to the backend come from your Angular server. So what happened right now is that your Angular server, from a request that go outside the internet, go back in your data center and get the data from the backend. And this had some delay, of course, maybe also some additional cost or complexity because you are going from inside to outside and inside again. And this task is about understand that the request is coming from your Angular server and allow to have an internal routing for your, a privileged routing for your internal server. This has been solved by 4Science. Is right now available in a public branch on 4Science GitHub repository, and we are going to open the pull request to the community. So it will be part of DSpace 9, and we will see if something that could be considered also for 8 or not. There is discussion about many requests that are performant. If you inspect what happens when you visit any page of DSpace, you will be disturbed by the fact that your browser is performing more than 100 requests often to collect many small amount of data from the backend. And this can be optimized, of course. Instead, for instance, instead of asking for individual configuration one by one, you should ask for all the configuration that are needed for the user interface just with a single request instead of 3, 4, 5 requests to get Google IP key, to get information about if a specific feature is enabled or not, and things like that. The same problem applies with the user permission. One of the major performance issue of DSpace is when you have a list of objects, Many times, if you have a list of 10 items, each of these items is checked for the same aspect in separate requests. So can I edit this item? Can I edit this item? Can I edit this item to create the edit button in the administrative dashboard? And of course, this low down interface, this could kill your user interface if instead of using 10 sites as a page, you move to 100 or 1,000 sites. And this will solve this issue. It's just to say, can I perform edit on item 1, 2, 3, 4, just in a single request, ask for several items. This is the idea. And all the other aspects are in this area, essentially. The second macro topic is about maintain the goal to have DSpace as a turnkey solution. We want to have DSpace easy to install. Yes, we need to look to our repository as an enterprise-grade application, but it don't need to be overcomplicated. And we have already done a lot in DSpace, also in DSpace 8. For instance, 4Science have created the embedded Tomcat that will, we are confident it will simplify a lot maintenance, and the future installation of the backend is a step to move toward containerization at production drive. But something has been already done, this has been already merged, is a contribution from the African Livestock Research Institute. And the community in general is still working on that together. DSpace 9 will focus for sure in keeping the safety of your installation, so we need to maintain dependency updated. We moved to Java 17, we moved to Angular 17. We need to stay on the track because we need to follow the end of life of this dependency. And 4Science has made the update for Angular 17 in DSpace 8. We are still discussing who will take the lead for the upgrade of Angular 18 and Spring. It's not a very visible change, but I need to say, I want to say thanks to everyone. If maybe this time will be the turn of Atmire that perform other major release in the previous step. Everyone that will do that will give a good back to the community. It's something that need to be done. It's not very visible, it's not the best for the marketing, but need to be done. There is also some discussion open around the OI. For instance, there is some different approach to which metadata is used to maintain the OI that has been extracted from external system or are mined directly by DSpace. Modularization is the key. We want to have DSpace to be competitive, so it needs to provide a lot of features. It needs to be the turnkey solution for a variety of use cases. It's not only the simple repository, it's also the digital library, it's also the research information system. All of the use cases need to be supported. But we need to keep installation and management as easy as possible. So modularization is the key to keep these two conflict goals together. One big step ahead was done on the user interface to make the user interface more modular with standalone component, was done in DSpace 8. The full proposal is linked on the wiki, come from 4Science. We are still working on that. We expect to improve on DSpace 9. What about accessibility and other major fixes? So accessibility is not one-time effort. It's not something new. So it's nice to say, yes, the community now gives some fund to focus on accessibility issue. But this is something that is true since the time of DSpace 7. DSpace 7 has conducted an assessment of accessibility with the Q company, specialized company in US, and the community have taken charge of the issue that was identified at this time. As 4Science, we put a lot of effort on this topic. And right now there are, I just make some math before the meeting. It was 30 issues related to, that are going on about accessibility, flagged with the accessibility issue. And more or less 30% of that was taken by 4Science. Some topic has been already identified for discussion maybe on DSpace 10. So let's do it the same than before, focus on this macro activity. The first one is increasing understanding that entities are essential for repository. So we have configurable entities science DSpace 7. This is something very important. But configurable entities are not enabled by default in DSpace 7 nor in DSpace 8. And honestly, there are good reasons why they are not enabled by default. The developer decided it was not ready to be enabled by everyone. This was not ready in terms of documentation, it was not enabled in terms of all the features that exist around that. We were not so confident about the stability of that. And there are performance implications that can be managed, but are not out-of-box managed for all the scenarios. So depending on the size of your repository, your specific needs, maybe the configuration become a bit more complex. So this is the reason why they are not enabled by default. But more than we move ahead, more we found that to build advanced functionality, we need to have configurable entities. You already heard that all the new features that they presented require configurable entities, ORCID synchronization require configurable entities, and so on. So one question for the community is, we should enable configurable entities by default. And you already have. If you have an item that is not a publication, is not a research data, is not an organization, what is this? It's a generic item, okay? Call it generic item as an entity and you have done. This is an entity. Nothing is changing in your repository. But now you can start to collect, to link items together, and this will empower your repository. But one of the aspects is also which features are missing and what we can do better to have configurable entities enabled by default in DSpace. And as you see, it was noted that there is a potential alignment with DSpace CRIS. So let me talk briefly about what is DSpace CRIS to clarify some aspects. DSpace CRIS is an open source extension of DSpace. It is led by 4Science. It was created by me more than 10 years ago when I was not at 4Science. But from the start was always an open source solution. The copyright of the software was, since the start, assigned to DuraSpace first, Lyrasis later. This to assure that everyone can backport improvement from DSpace CRIS to DSpace without have to talk with 4Science at all. Why is named in this way? Because 15 years ago when we start, we say, okay, we need to put any item into context. It's not sufficient to have string metadata. We need to give more detail about what is around this item. And looking into IT information system, we say that the only people that talk about entities and data model and relation was the Research Information Management System. That, by the way, in Europe are named CRIS, Current Research Information System. So CRIS means Research Information Management System, and was named in this way because it seemed that the path was Research Information Management System 50 years ago. But since then, any repository platform starts to understand that researchers are primary actor in the repository. You need to track project because you need to acknowledge funding. You need to link publication with data set. So all start to talk about entities. The DSpace community was a bit slowly than other to adopt this concept, but luckily now we have entities, since DSpace 7, and we can compete with digital commons we need to compete with digital commons and Prince, Haplo, and other open solutions that already have entities. DSpace CRIS is the sister of DSpace, I don't know, but it's not a fork. I don't want to use the word fork because many things are already bringing back from DSpace CRIS to DSpace. Maybe you are not aware that the MyDSpace and the submission system that 4Science have implemented in DSpace 7.0 was first created for DSpace CRIS, because we have a project with the University of Hasselt that fund development for the world community and was implemented both for DSpace CRIS and DSpace, because the two platforms are so similar, are much more similar than different. And more recently, also a lot of other features come from DSpace CRIS to DSpace. But go now to what community is interested. To the previous list, feature that the community is thinking that we need to have in DSpace 9, DSpace 10. Hierarchical metadata. All from the library world know that flat metadata is the major limitation of DSpace. In the library is 15 here that we know that metadata are not flat, are hierarchical. But DSpace is still using a flat metadata schema. It's still more or less a simple double core. So hierarchical metadata are already supported in DSpace CRIS. You can, you have an example here where you can manage employment. So you have a possibility to track the different role that a person have in different organizations at different time. This is managed in the submission or in the edit, but this is also managed in the detail page. So when this information are exposed together. So of course, I'm the CTIO for Science since July of 2016. Previously, I was in a different company with a different role. It's not only about affiliation. It's not only about person and employment and things like that. Employment, education, qualification. ORCID has exactly this concept. We are not talking about research information management system. We are talking about reality. We are talking about ORCID, that is something that all the repositories need to interact with. But publication have hierarchical metadata, where if you need to check the acknowledgement of that the authors has used in a specific publication, which was the affiliation that I used to sign this specific publication. I created content before that I was in 4Science, and my previous employee deserve to be acknowledged of this content. I cannot just say this content is from Bollini work in 4Science, this work is from 4Science. It's not true. So here you see this was a publication that was a year ago. We worked together. It was your first contribution to DSpace. It was the administrative patch for DSpace 1.4, I think, something like that. And team was not only this at this time. It was working at University of Illinois Urban Chain. And you see how now you can sign for each individual author the specific affiliation. And here also you see the ROR integration in DSpace CRIS that look a bit better and more integrated than in DSpace because all are kept together. And this information is also available on the publication page. So Tim was at the University of Illinois and me was at Cineca, the Italian consortium. Statistics. DSpace CRIS has the same statistics of DSpace. It's the same storage, we use Solar. But we provide a nicer view of this data. So we have, for instance, Google Mesh App that allow you to see who are using your repository. You can filter the statistics to have different period of time. You can have different kind of report for visualization, for download, and you can configure a lot of these aspects just in a configuration file without writing code. You can get also the details, so you have the most viewed items, so with the number, you can see the usage of the repository over time and access to the whole data that are present in your Solar statistics. It's nothing special. It's the statistic of DSpace just with an enhanced visualization. One of the most relevant features of DSpace CRIS compared to DSpace is the ability to edit data in a friendly user interface. This was one of the requirements that someone else has put on the wiki to say, oh, we will need that for DSpace tab. Okay, we already have in DSpace CRIS, so it can be reported. And allow anyone to gain some limited permission to manipulate some data. In DSpace, your researcher can edit their own profile. This is normal, if you think, because this is your profile, you can modify your biography and things like that. But DSpace allows to do that just using the administer page. Okay, you are thinking about that. Yes, I see from your side that some repository administrator know how hard it is to use this page. In DSpace CRIS, you have an edit that is simply the submission user interface, where all the rules are respected. You have a mandatory field, you have job down menu, you can set a lot of detail, and you can avoid mistake. For instance, you cannot change, if the gender is from a drop down, you cannot enter the information in 100 different ways, the same information. Or if you have the ORCID ID in DSpace CRIS, the ORCID ID is put in read-only mode. You cannot damper your ORCID ID. But this is true for any researcher. And one thing that is very useful is that you can create more edit mode for different users. So you can allow specific user to manipulate some data and other user to manipulate a different set of data. And these apply for any entities. So your researcher can edit their profile, but you can decide that the researcher author can partially edit their publication or can partially edit their research data. Maybe can edit some metadata, but cannot alter the file. So you have a very granular control about what they can do. And this is also more important if you think about new entities like project. Investigators usually need to keep current data about the status of the project, is ongoing, has been extended, has been completed, and things like that. Another thing is about the security. If you move away from publication, publications are easy because public, everything is public, essentially, should be public. But if you move to project or person, of course you have data that could be sensitive, could be personal, email address, and you can decide to restrict just an individual value. So to say this is private or this is public. So anonymous users are not able to see the email address, but if you make public, anonymous user will also get email address. And you can have different level of access, so it's not only public or logged in user or administrator. You can decide the different level of security that you need. Everything is respected both at the user interface side, then on the backend side. So the REST API also follows the same rule. Why I'm talking about this feature of DSpace CRIS? Because we are talking about this feature for DSpace. So they are already available, they are already open source, and can be backported to DSpace. Two last initiatives that I want to share with you. ORCID Improvements. This is an initiative with the ORCID US community led by Lyrasis. Lyrasis get funding from the global participation program of ORCID to improve the current integration between DSpace and ORCID, which is the main focus of this improvement. There are some bug fixing, but the most important thing is about login flow. When you log in, when you need to connect your local profile with ORCID, you use to outflow to verify your credential on the ORCID side. And many users are in trouble because the email address used on the ORCID side is different than the email address used on the DSpace side. And there is no way to manage this mismatch right now. So you get an error onto the DSpace side saying, we don't find you, or your email address on the ORCID side is private, so I'm not able to link with your DSpace profile. This improvement will allow you to manually fix this issue, so asking for the researcher which is your email address into your system, of course in a secure way so that we can trust what they say, and to avoid the duplication of account and to make this match. The last initiative, this one about ORCID is already ongoing, is funded, is planned for DSpace 8 and DSpace 9. On DSpace 8, some are bug fixes will be there, other are new feature, so probably will be not in DSpace 8, will be in DSpace 9. But a patch will be available also for DSpace 8. OpenAlex instead is literally behind in the status. We have created a funding proposal with University of Cambridge. We are waiting for the funder decision. We hope that they will grant fund so that DSpace will be integrated with OpenAlex in regard of the publication claim feature that we presented at the start. So I hope to give a good overview of what has been done in DSpace 8 in terms of innovative feature, which was the contribution from 4Science, what we aim to do for DSpace 9, and we envision as the future for a modern repository, a competitive repository, all beyond DSpace 9. Thank you.
Take a few questions.